Balder at Liseberg is one of 4 of one of the most innovative wooden coaster types out there. It is the signature wooden roller coaster at Liseberg, and it fits the atmosphere and ride lineup wonderfully. It's got a reputation of being all about airtime and absolutely nothing else.
Is that it?
This is a classic airtime focused mega coaster made wooden with one thing on offer. And I'll tell you already, it does exactly what it sets out to do, and exceptionally as well, which is launch riders into the stratosphere. Some view its simplicity and repetitiveness as a con, others just enjoy the power. So let me give you my perspective on one of Liseberg's best coasters. I wrote this in July of 2023. Let's get into it.
I can deny it no longer! I am small.
Balder is an Intamin prefabricated wooden coaster, a special coaster type where the track is pre-cut and assembled on site, just like a regular steel coaster, instead of being done from scratch at the park, which also makes it feel different from any other type of wooden coaster out there, which I will get more into later.
I don't think we're alike at all.
Balder opened in 2003. It was the second ever of its kind after Colossus at HeidePark, which is a much bigger boy. It's also Liseberg's second ever wooden coaster after a classic scenic railway with a brakeman that operated from 1923 through 1987, designed by the same legend that designed Rutschebanen at Tivoli Gardens. So Balder came later to introduce the suites to a proper modern Woody.
Future's now, old man.
It features a great capacity of 30 rider trains over 15 rows through 5 cars, and in those cars you have the classic Intamin T-bar restraints, including a seatbelt. The restraints are similar but also feeling different from those found on mega coasters such as Goliath or Piraten. They're comfortable, solid for airtime, and could give lots of room. It's 118.1 feet tall, so it is the smallest of all the prefabricated wooden coasters, or prefabs for short. It's got a length of 3,510.5 feet, which is also the shortest in length of all the prefabs, and it's got a speed of 55.9 miles an hour, which is unsurprisingly the slowest of all the prefabs too. It is the little boy, but it's also an underdog in a way, because this coaster truly shows why size does not necessarily matter and how a compact package can hit harder than the larger drawn out ones. With those stats, it's also got an impressive ride duration of 1 minute and 6 seconds from the lift hill to the final brake run. This makes it a very long ride, especially for its size. And in the layout, it's got 0 inversions, because that's just not what you did on wooden coasters back then.
The mighty god Balder is a god of radiant radiance.
Wooden coasters tend to always look good, and Balder is absolutely no exception. One of the first things you notice is the fact that this crosses over itself so much. It looks very compact, and it's a jungle of track. It's a big ass layer cake of wooden coasters.
Wait. It's all hyper-realistic cake, always has been.
But it does look mighty, still relatively large, and it's great on the skyline, especially passing from the highway. So for that reason, it's pretty imposing, and the most imposing part of its appearance is that drop. This is a twisted drop, the only one of the prefabs to have that instead of a regular straight drop, and it is hella steep. It looks so surreal on a wooden coaster, and I've really never seen any other Woody with a drop like this, not even an RMC. It just looks surreal. On top of that, Balder also has a lot of tunnels and sound barriers, which really gives a character and somehow add to the theme with their aesthetics. The final thing to note is that Balder has 1 red and 1 blue train. I love that kind of thing, differences in train colors, and it gives it a little more character.
I have character.
Of course, you are a character. Doesn't mean that you have character.
Especially with that contrast.
You wanna see me do it again?
The layout begins with a small turnaround, going into a very steep chain lift hill. This feels unbelievably steep when you're on it. Then you have a small pre-drop going into this turnaround, and then comes one of the most bonkers first drops I've ever experienced. The twisted drop is absolutely nuts. In the front roll, you'll start to gain some more gradual but really fun and stomach-dropping floater airtime, but in the back row, you get absolutely yanked into this drop, and you do not feel prepared for it ever. You already gain speed on the turnaround itself, and when you go into it, you get some awesome ejector airtime, some really wonky laterals, you get an insane stomach dropping feeling because it just goes so steep, so fast, and on top of that, the head choppers are kind of insane with that speed. You feel so packed in while experiencing crazy and very rapid fast forces. So this is actually one of those drops that scare me every time. And therefore, it is also one of my favorite first drops of all time. It is bonkers, and definitely my favorite part of the ride. At the bottom of the drop, you'll also experience some great positive forces, which is something these prefabs are really good at. Then you hit the first camelback. In all rows, you'll get very strong floater airtime on this entire hill, which is very sustained as well. And it's just a warm-up for what's about to come, because it might just be the weakest of the airtime hills on the ride, but it's still really good. Then next up is an overbank. And this is the big trend with Baldur outside of its many camelbacks and bunny hills. Baldur has a shitload of these overbanks, and I'm just gonna say exactly how every single one of them feels right off the bat, because they're all exactly the same in how they feel. They feel like nothing. You feel absolutely no forces here. So just know that whenever I say one of these overbanks are there, just know that there are no forces here, and we might as well move on to the next element. So let's do that. Next up is the largest camelback on Baldur, which also goes through a tunnel. In the front row, this one gives some weaker ejector airtime, very similar to those big camelbacks on Colossus, and in the back row you get some very fun flojector airtime. Then you have another overbank, skip, and then comes the first set of two smaller bunny hills. And this is where you'll truly start to feel the power of Baldur regarding its airtime.
This is where the fun begins.
These two bunny hills both have awesome, strong ejector airtime. We're talking Mega-Coaster, Mega-Lite power of airtime. They are semi-sustained as well, although they're still pretty small, so not super sustained, but just know they are awesome and pretty darn good in power. Then you have another overbank, and then a little piece of straight track. I don't know why they didn't fit a little bunny hill in there, but yeah, this is strange. And it goes into a very large bunny hill slash smaller camelback, which is another moment of weaker ejector airtime up front and strong ejector airtime in the back. Then you have another overbank, and then an additional set of two bunny hills. But these are different than the prior ones. For some reason, Intamin just decided to shape these differently. Instead of them having a normal curve, they almost feel like they're triangle shaped because they're very tight at the top. Tight! You get the same power of ejector airtime as the two bunny hills earlier on, but the pops are way shorter. Then another overbank leading into the final straight of two bunny hills. And these two bunny hills are, in my opinion, the best ones. They feel exactly the same as the first set of two bunny hills, meaning you get some semi-sustained, very strong ejector airtime. These two are just slightly stronger, and therefore, in my opinion, the strongest airtime on the ride. They are freaking awesome. Then there is a small curved ascent into the final brake run, where in the front roll you get some strong floater airtime and some weaker floater airtime near the back. Then you hit the final brake run, but if you sit in the front roll, you get a small lateral dash heading into this next turn, because it takes a little bit of time for the ride to slow down. That is the admittedly repetitive but also powerful layout of Baldur.
Oh my god, can you let me do what I need to do?
Like all Intamins, Baldur needs to warm up a little bit to reach its true power. But when it's warmed up, it keeps its speed very well. It absolutely slaughters those airtime hills by the end, smashes through those sections, and feels quite fast whenever it's not turning. Because when it is, well, that's where the ride's big problem is, and it's by far the biggest complaint with it. The overbanks keep knocking the pacing down whenever it gets up.
You just don't know when to give up, do you?
I can do this all day.
For me though, they don't actually bother me. They make the straight sections feel like they got a little bit of speed boost when you gain some speed back from them. And they also add some anticipation because I just look forward to the airtime on every single overbank. There is a trick to go a little faster in Baldur's overbanks though. You gotta row. Rowing makes them go faster, trust me. And I don't know why, but these overbanks are just so dumb it's funny as well, and I appreciate that.
I appreciate it.
The point is, there are a major problem to the pacing, but I literally don't care.
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
Baldur is a weird coaster, and so is Colossus, so I'm pointing my fingers at the prefabs as a whole, but it's for a cool reason. Even though it's a wooden coaster, it feels like a steel coaster. The way it tracks and the feel of the roll itself just makes it feel different from any other wooden coaster I've ridden. I don't know, it's hard to explain, but it just feels like riding on steel track with this model. It's basically a material pretending to be another material disguised as another material.
Behold my handcrafted purity.
Which means it's very smooth. Baldur does have a bit of shuffling and a bit of shaking back and forth from side to side, but it's very normal for any coaster and nothing to really care about. In fact, it's still one of the smoother wooden coasters I've done, and I'd say it adds a little bit of charm to it as well. The recent track work it got really did a wonder on it. But again, it's not really anything you really think about, and I didn't really pay any attention to it either, so basically it's not a problem.
There's no problem.
It's a very smooth coaster and it feels strange. Like several rides in that particular area of Liseberg, Balder is themed to Old Norse mythology. Balder in particular is the name of the god known to be the most beautiful of the Aesir, which made Loki go all queen from Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Who is the fairest one of all?
And got his ass killed. Which probably wasn't a good idea since Odin, king of all gods, was Balder's dad. Gold star for Loki. But I love the way that Liseberg incorporates this story with Balder's and Loki's rivalry with the rides. You got Balder and then the actual flat rider Loki kind of swinging over toward it. Really cool detail. But besides having a cool ass backstory, the ride is barely themed. One of the first things you might notice is the fact that there's a little bit of a pattern on the cars, which does have a Viking vibe, so that's great. There's of course the logo by the entrance as well, which also adds a bit of theming, and a bit of the woodwork with the virtual queue line entrance. The most themed aspects of the ride is the artwork in the station. There are these very cool depictions of characteristics from Norse mythology, characters, and the Tree of Life Yggdrasil, and it all gives exactly the right vibe. It actually gives me a bit of nostalgia as well. As a Scandinavian person, I saw a lot of cartoons and TV depictions and everything of Norse mythology as a kid, and this is exactly that style. That's it for theming though. Balder is very loosely themed, even for the park. I really wish they did more with it because it is a hella cool theme. And I love how they made one of the most beautiful looking wooden coasters I've seen themed to the most beautiful god.
I'll get you, bitch! Awesome, awesome, and handsome! Awesome!
Balder is an example of a ride that's simple as fuck, but still hella awesome. The ride is freaking fire. It may only do one thing since those overbanks do squat, but that one thing is done amazingly. The airtime is so good, so strong, and just so fun. I love every single one of those hills, some more than others. These short ones are odd. But man, this airtime is just freaking great. And the overbank still adds some anticipation for them. And again, remember to do the rowing, it's important. Every straight with airtime hills also feels different, so it's not that repetitive again. There's also no doubt in my mind that Balder is absolutely a back row ride. Prior to riding it, I've mostly heard people prefer the front, but I really think the back just hit better on almost every airtime hill, and especially that drop. Overall, I'll give Balder a 9 out of 10 for my final score. This ride just did it for me. I absolutely loved it. It's amazing to ride many times, super re-rideable, and it's basically the Mega-Lite of wooden coasters. It's lacking the whip of those rides, but it is doubling up on the airtime.
Double cheeked up!
What's really crazy to me is the fact that T-Express in South Korea pretty much has all of Balder's layout and an impressive first half with a big drop in camelback and turns. You can bet that thing rocketed up my bucket list because I loved Balder fairly more than I expected to. I'd say I went in with an open mind, but I was kind of blown away about how fun and awesome this super simple ride turned out to be. So let me know what you think about Balder or maybe one of the other prefabs down in the comments below. Thank you so much for watching. I can't wait to come back to ride this thing. I even heard that it actually ran better than ever when I visited. And otherwise, I'm gonna go to bed because it's late as shit. So bye!